Happy Tuesday, pro-life family. So with last week's hot news coming out of the Supreme Court, this week we need to talk about what happens after Roe overturns. Lots to discuss. Grab a chair, grab some coffee. Let's do this. Welcome to the Pro-Life Podcast. Pull up a chair. Welcome to the table. Grab your coffee. We've got ours. We'll introduce the Pro-Life family today. Kim Schwartz, Director of Media and Communications. Dr. John Seago has joined us again from Austin, driving in. Thanks, man, for joining us. Director of Legislation. Veronica Arnold-Smither, our Education Director. Emily Cook, General Counsel and all-around cool person. And Brent Klingerman, IT Director over here. So guys, we want to talk today, obviously last week, spicy news. Hasn't really affected any laws yet, but we have a direction. So it has started the conversation nationally. What happens now? What does America look like? What does Texas look like post Roe v. Wade?
Good question. Yeah, the leak, the Supreme Court leak of the document, I mean, that was a huge deal. And also, I wonder about, like, the personal safety of the Supreme Court justices. Talk about that. And talk about the churches that were attacked or threatened to be attacked. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, what is the world going to look like now post-Roe? You're a lawyer. What do you think, madam?
It's not a new question. We have been planning for this and to explain what a post-Dobbs world looks like for the pro-life community and for America at large. We just expected to be having these conversations in June, right? Not when
maybe July.
Right.
Yeah.
And for our viewers, that's when all the Supreme Court opinions for this term have to come out by the end of June. So we expected the Roe v. Wade, the Dobbs case dealing with Roe v. Wade and the Mississippi ban to come out towards the end of June. Right. And but now we're going to talk about it now. Yep. So
I'm really grateful that we're having these conversations now because, we've been talking about what comes after Roe v. Wade for years. And something that I've always been mindful of is I always thought, people aren't going to know that after Roe v. Wade is overturned, the question goes back to the states and that our work isn't done. Yeah. And so I think that people have been really mindful of that these last few days. I've been really encouraged by people understanding that fact. So what are we going to focus on after Roe is overturned, hopefully?
Yeah, and I think the pro-life movement in Texas specifically has an important role in this because we've kind of had a preview of what a post-Roe is like for the last couple of months since September. And so
with the Texas Heartbeat Act,
Texas Heartbeat Act. So when you have a reduction of more than 55% of your abortions, we have been talking to the rest of the country saying, like, we're seeing a glimpse of what, a post-Roe world is going to be like. And so a lot of the issues that we're going to talk about today have come to the surface and we've seen them. And so I think that, like Emily said, since Dobbs was announced that the court was actually going to take this up, we knew what we wanted in that case. And so we started talking to elected officials. This was after our session. And so, we immediately moved to, in a post-Roe world, these are the policies we'll need. This is the emphasis that we'll need to have. And then we've just kind of been seeing that with a lot of these issues coming to the surface that we'll talk about from during the Texas Heartbeat Act. So it's something we've been thinking about, but it's a huge thing, and we need the whole movement to be committed to this. We need other people to be thinking about it, like you're talking about. So.
Yeah, definitely. And there's the policy side of it, and then there's the cultural side of it, because no change is going to stay along if the culture isn't with us. And so that's going to be kind of the twofold approach there of making sure that we keep the emphasis on valuing life from the cultural perspective, but also pushing policies that will immediately save lives.
Yeah. So let's, if we fast forward, Roe is overturned. Immediately, we're going to have a handful of states like Texas that will have pro-life laws go into effect immediately. So we have trigger laws. A lot of states have their laws on the books that banned abortion before Roe, and those are still valid. The states didn't go back and repeal those. And so you're going to have a situation where, around 20 to 25 states are going to have pro-life policies in place. And then, but, and so a lot of our neighbors are going to be like that here in Texas. But unfortunately, I mean, New Mexico is probably going to remain a pro-abortion state. And so, thinking politically, pro-life movement needs to invest in those others, Colorado, Florida, New Mexico, Virginia. These are states that there is going to be a very active fight, and they really could go either way. And so politically, yes, we need to divide and conquer.
Yep.
We need to move on. And so, that will be, and then also federal, moving the fight federally, trying to pass pro-life legislation there. So that's going to continue. I mean, that goes. But as far as what Texas goes, we have, a lot of things to look at, a lot of public policy dilemmas, and a lot of opportunities post-Roe. So, definitely want to get into that.
Yeah.
What are some of those dilemmas?
So the first category is enforcement. So, once our, Roe is overturned, 30 days after Roe is overturned, our trigger law will take effect. We have a pre-Roe, we have both. We have a pre-Roe statute that will take effect immediately. And so abortion will be illegal in Texas. The difference is just, will it actually be stopped?
Right.
So just putting something on the books, making it a crime, doesn't necessarily save the lives, right? It doesn't actually have a law enforced. And so we have to make sure that our pro-life laws are actually being enforced. So we have, for example, Vice News covered this story where abortion activists in Mexico are physically bringing over abortion-inducing drugs into Texas.
We talked about that in episode 1. Go check it out.
Nice. Okay. And then we have companies that have popped up that are advertising to Texans, hey, just go to this website.
Like Lyft and all these other.
Tesla, Amazon, they're all saying like, we'll give women time off, pay them $4,000, like coverage up to $4,000 to go have an abortion out of state, travel, all that stuff. It's terrible.
I didn't know about Tesla.
Yeah, Tesla.
Womp womp.
Yeah. I mean, this is why we talked about this too. The conservative movement, the pro-life movement cannot rely on any one person to be our savior other than, the actual savior, Jesus.
It's not pro-life yet.
No.
Yet.
We gotta pray, so we can pray for them. Anyways, so like these companies, everything, they're paying for abortions out of state, and so the danger is, women who live in Texas are going to travel outside of state, or they're going to turn to these illegal abortion drugs.
Getting paid to kill your child.
Yes.
Absolutely terrible.
Yeah.
So then we have companies that are advertising in Texas, just go to this website and order abortion-inducing drugs that will be mailed directly to your dorm room, will be mailed directly to you. And that's illegal. That's, it's a state jail felony in Texas now. But these companies are based in other countries. And the doctors that are kind of running it are outside of Texas jurisdiction, outside of U.S. jurisdiction. So we need to adopt public policy tools to enforce these laws, actually stop those from happening. We have, it's not beyond imagination that we're going to have abortionists just open up private offices and start doing abortions in kind of safe counties, right? We think about pro-abortion states. Well, we're going to have pro-abortion counties too, where, Travis County, where I live.
Austin.
Where they just won't enforce it? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, where the
illegal, but protected.
The district attorney, I mean.
Well, explain why.
Wow.
Why the enforcement can be different from one county to the next. Who has that authority?
Yeah, so each county has a district attorney, and they have discretion as to what they prosecute, what they go after. And we've seen these district attorneys announce, hey, we actually will not enforce pro-life laws, even if Roe is overturned. They signed a public letter saying that. And
in 2020, when Amy Coney Barrett was getting confirmed, there were a whole ton of pro-abortion district attorneys who are in the pockets of Planned Parenthood. So whenever you're relying on them to bring charges against abortionists who might be breaking the law, do you think we can rely on those pro-abortion district attorneys?
Yeah.
No, they've already said as much.
And 4 of them were from Texas who were on that letter.
Yeah, and so even in the reddest of the red states like Texas, most abortion clinics are located in very blue cities and counties.
Yeah.
And it's to remind our viewers, you probably don't even know who your district attorney is, much less that they're on your ballot every 4 years. So they're elected, and that's definitely one area to be cognizant of, because they can be supported by the pro-abortion forces, and now they're kind of a benign issue, and now they're an important piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
Well,
So
it sounds like, well, but why would they do that? Nobody would really do that. But we look at even the early days of marijuana legalization, it's still federally banned. We've just created these state laws and regional laws that allow it.
We won't enforce,
we won't enforce it here.
Yeah.
So, while it sounds crazy, but we already see this. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some areas of Houston that were renowned for not enforcing against sex trafficking. Thankfully, there's been a big crackdown on that. But yeah, I mean, there were.
Not like
It
there
was.
ought to be.
It's like don't go to that part of town
So,
because.
I mean, it's a hurdle, a huge hurdle for the pro-life movement, but it's not, insurmountable. There are public policy tools we could use. So we're talking in the legislature about, do we give local DAs who are in a county next door jurisdiction. So Montgomery County gets to send their DA gets to come down to Harris County in Houston and enforce the law if they won't. Do we give that authority to the Attorney General that he could go into Travis County and say, you're not following up on this investigation, but the best. So those are good, and a lot of our friends are talking about those in the Capitol. But to us, we have seen how private enforcement has worked in Texas, how it was a big enough threat to the abortion industry that they felt they had to follow the law.
Yeah, that's how the Texas Heartbeat Act is enforced, through the private lawsuits. If an abortionist right now in Texas, not after Roe v. Wade necessarily, like today, if an abortionist commits an abortion on a baby who has a beating heart, he is, a detectable heartbeat. He could be subject to lawsuits from any private citizen. And that has scared the abortion industry so much that they've just stopped committing abortions. They say after 6 weeks, it's really just when the baby has a detectable heartbeat, which typically occurs around 6 weeks. And so the private enforcement has proven very, very useful. And so I think that, last week, Oklahoma too signed the Oklahoma Heartbeat Act into law. And so hopefully we can spread that some more.
But that's a better tool, because if I'm the abortion industry in Houston, Texas, and I know my local DA, we endorsed them, Planned Parenthood endorsed you, and you're pro-choice, and, you're not going to come after us, that's one thing. But if you're the abortion industry, and you've gone underground, but you're worried about all these, pro-lifers out there bringing lawsuits, that's more of a threat than one public official. Anyway, these are the types of public policy questions about actually enforcing our laws. And there's some complicated stuff. The mail, abortion-inducing drugs being mailed in, that's a difficult thing to enforce. But we've got to commit, first of all, to actually making sure we're actually abortion-free, right?
Yeah.
That we're not just, have pro-life laws on the books and then we're good.
We feel good about ourselves. And it's all of our laws say exactly what we want them to. Are they being followed? No, but we feel good about ourselves.
Yeah. So that's the first piece, is making sure Texas is actually abortion-free.
So after the legal aspects, what are the other things that we can do and that are going to be necessary for the pro-life community to stop elective abortion?
Gosh, well, I can't help but think about the human element of all of this. The laws are super important, but what about the women who are having an unexpected or crisis pregnancy and they are tempted to have an abortion? These are the people that we need to look after and care for, and that's going to be its own challenge.
Yeah. Sometimes we kind of say a crisis pregnancy, but I like to say a pregnancy in the middle of a crisis, and not that the pregnancy, the pregnancy is a crisis, but meeting women who find themselves pregnant in the middle of some other kind of life tumultuous event, and helping them deal with the crisis. The crisis is not the baby; it is a situation surrounding the crisis,
right? Like poverty, or a terrible relationship, or homelessness, or being in college and thinking that they can't have a baby in college. There's so many other things that they're actually afraid of. These women are afraid of.
Yeah, on those situations, it's like we, as the pro-life movement, have the obligation to build a pro-life Texas, not just an abortion-free Texas.
Yeah.
And we've already started that, the Alternatives to Abortion program, a lot of the ministries that we're involved in outside of our political work, the students, raising money. There's tons of stuff going on to do that. But I think especially in this moment, we as the movement need to double our efforts and really be concentrated on building a pro-life Texas. One of the things that, has the most political momentum is supporting pregnant college students, is making sure that they're not discriminated against, making sure that they don't lose their scholarship if they have to take off a semester, 2 semesters, for actually, having their child. Yeah. And we've heard, from a lot of our students about the hurdles that they face even on campus, like not having childcare on campus.
Having to park like 40 miles away or whatever.
Right. Yeah, there's all kinds of little challenges that you wouldn't think about until you're in that situation. And we've had employees and interns and college fellowship students who have been through this. Some of them, got pregnant in college and chose life, and because of that fell into the pro-life movement, and so they've been able to share their testimonies of what their needs are. Like you said, parking.
Yeah.
You literally would never think of that. But parking and walking a mile with a stroller uphill, which that is literally the case at Sam Houston University, for instance. They have a very hilly campus, and the parking lot is a mile away.
Dropping names.
No, not to say there's nothing wrong with Sam Houston University administration or anything. It's just one of those things you would never have thought of.
Yeah.
And then it's little simple things that can make life so much easier and help a woman understand that she doesn't need to have an abortion just because she's in college.
Yeah.
Well, and even some of our students find that there's not even changing tables in the bathrooms.
Yeah.
So that's a problem. And one of the reasons why focusing so much on college age students, because consistently the demographic of American women who are having abortions, seeking abortions, are that 18 to 24 range. People like to say, oh, well, you're going to have teenage pregnancies on the rise and everything. No, these are post-high school students who find themselves pregnant in college, and no one is giving them any resources to say, actually, this is not going to, this is so doable. You don't have to do that. We heard about that from Catherine Glenn Foster in the episode that she did with us.
And a lot of, in higher ed, on the policy side, in higher ed circles, there's a lot of conversation about non-traditional students. How do we build our institutions? How do we make sure our colleges are friendly to non-traditional students? And that's what, we need to think of pregnant students as, is there are little things, like you're talking about, that seem little on paper, but they make a world of difference about whether a woman feels like she can actually finish her education, which is going to lead to a career, which is going to mean more stability. And so helping her flourish, and there is public policy stuff we can do there. But also, I think, talking to our universities, all the universities that we've graduated from, making sure this is on their radar, that creating a pro, pregnant student environment needs to be critical.
Yeah.
But also educating about the tools that are already available. And so, in the conversation, in the pro-life conversation, when you find someone who is like-minded, you go to politics, the conversation turns to politics, turns to Roe v. Wade, and we just need to do a better job about talking about the alternatives to abortion program, how to approach your administration when you find yourselves in a pregnant in college, kind of those tools. I had in the aftermath, Facebook warriors, and this one girl from college, I saw her, she's like, she posted, I wish that all these pro-life people were pro after birth, and what about
I have good news for you.
I know. And I was like, oh, I'm not going to engage. I'm just not going to get into this fight right now. But, Medicaid and alternatives to abortion program. But anyway, so there's just this, and she's my Facebook friend. How does she not know? I don't know. But
I think it's just that willful, partially like a willful ignorance. Anyone who says that the pro-life movement does nothing to help women and children after birth is just straight up not paying attention. There is no excuse anymore.
How many millions of dollars?
Hang on. We have other important information we need to present our crowd. So we will come back to these other millions of dollars and resources and things that are available in just a moment.
Good point.
Texas Right to Life is facing 14 lawsuits from Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. They're suing us because we helped pass the Texas Heartbeat Act. And they're trying to scare us pro-lifers into backing down. Please join us in the fight against Planned Parenthood and donate to protect the Texas Heartbeat Act. You can fight for the unborn and build a pro-life Texas that values every human life. Go to texasrighttolife.com/lawsuit to make your contribution. Every cent will help, and it's greatly appreciated.
Social media companies are hiding pro-life content from you. Fight back against big tech. Text pro-life to 40237 for direct access to the best pro-life news. Since 2019, our web traffic has been down 90% because of big tech censorship. Stay ahead of the censors. When you text pro-life to 40237, you're in control, not some algorithm telling you what you can and cannot see. Join now, text pro-life to 40237.
Okay, welcome back. I should have taken an opportunity to get a coffee refill, but we need to cover here what are these other resources and the millions allotted, et cetera,
Yes.
where we left off.
Okay, so this is my, oh my gosh, this is my soapbox. I cannot tell you how many times, and I know you've had this too, of people in the comments section or your liberal cousin or whoever will say, well, if you end abortion, you're going to have to adopt all of those babies, or the pro-life movement doesn't do anything to help women after the child is born. You just care about her being an incubator. This is the most...
It's true. I
That's
see these
what they
rants. It's
say.
ridiculous.
Ignorance.
That is the most just pulled out of thin air argument I have ever heard. And so we have the proof. The proof is in the pudding. Look at the Alternatives to Abortion Fund. And it's also notable that the pro-choice state representatives almost always vote against this program.
Yep.
So it is a state-funded program of pregnancy centers, adoption agencies, and maternity homes that will give women pretty much any social service that you could imagine.
And physical resources,
Yes.
like diapers and clothes and strollers and
material
bassinets.
material assistance, like furniture and clothes, all the things Veronica mentioned.
We should do an episode with just some folks from a pregnancy center and
Absolutely.
just let them
Yes.
go through the whole slew of things they have available.
Oh, but I'm told that these are just terrible, awful clinics that don't actually do anything. No, ask the women who get help. I'm pretty sure, they find it helpful. Materials assistance, job skills training, education, in career mentorship.
Parenting classes.
Parenting, all of these things. A place to stay if she thinks I'm going to get kicked out of my house.
Grants for rent.
Yeah. So don't go telling me that the pro-life movement doesn't do anything for women who are in these difficult pregnancies. And even this program extends to children after birth, up to the child is 3 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
To the tune of $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Yeah, the last budget had $100 million in it for this program specifically, and this is just this is just the pregnancy centers that are in that program. You also have pregnancy centers, great pregnancy centers that are nonprofit, 100% nonprofit. They raise all their own funds. But I think, when we think about Post-Roe as a movement, we're obligated to know where are the pregnancy centers around us. How can I volunteer for them? How can I help them? A friend of mine, he is extremely pro-life, but he doesn't, he has a regular job. He doesn't work in the movement, and he doesn't feel like his giving money is enough to them, and so he mows their yard. Their lawn on their property, and so that is something that he can do, once a month. That he supports his pregnancy center by,
Love that.
doing that. So it's
That's awesome.
But that's the kind of thing that the pro-life movement, when we think about Post-Roe, is committing to not just getting the policies right, but also what is going on in our community.
And again, we have to look at what happened after the Texas Heartbeat Act took effect. I remember September 1st, we were getting all these calls from pregnancy centers saying that they've just seen a huge surge in the number of women on day one of abortions being the majority being made illegal on September 1st because of the Texas Heartbeat Act. These pregnancy centers saw a huge spike in the number of women that were coming through their doors to get help.
Yeah.
So that means, good job, we're doing our job and women are finding out about this. But that means that our work isn't done, that we have to do more to make sure we can keep up with the demand for these women who need help.
Maybe open more pregnancy centers. That's one thing that some of the students who've long graduated from our programs have talked about. That's their passions. They volunteered at a pregnancy center. They learned all about how to run it. They learned all the bioethics from us. And now they want to go open another one. They just duplicate the effort.
Yeah.
Well, and the pregnancy centers around me they're not open every day. They have a scattered schedule because they don't have enough volunteers. They don't have enough staff
That's a good point.
to be there during business hours every day of the week. And so, that's extremely inconvenient for, if you think about a woman who is balancing school, balancing work, or whatever.
My only day off is on Wednesday, and
Yeah.
the center nearest me is closed on Wednesdays.
So the pro-life movement, this is our time. I mean, we need to step up to volunteer, support these organizations.
I want to extend an invitation too to those who are pro-choice. If you really do care about women's health and helping women who are in unexpected pregnancies, come volunteer at a pregnancy center. If you actually want to help them in a difficult experience here, this is how you do it. Yeah. So, it isn't just for people who are like the avid pro-life, anybody. It could be anyone can help with these circumstances.
If you're a regular person with 3 hours on a Wednesday, go hang out. Yeah, the stories are unbelievable and amazing, and it's an amazing experience. I used to work with one of the pregnancy centers. Now my wife's on a board of a pregnancy center, but also we need to push word of mouth. Like, we can share this. These guys don't have the multi-billion-dollar baby murder advertising budgets.
Right. It's so true.
That those other guys have.
Well, and here's some really cool examples of just little things to do to help promote. A friend of mine works at a library and has recently become in a very good position of authority at the library. And so she decided to put up flyers for all the social services in their town at the library, because people who are impoverished are probably going to go there because they might not have a computer at home or Wi-Fi or anything, so they're going to go to the library. And so she put up ads for the pregnancy center and all these other things in the library, and now the pregnancy center is getting more people because of it. Okay. And I was like, that is awesome. Yeah. It was so great.
So I think, like, when we think about Post-Roe, so building a pro-life Texas, it has this piece. There are other things that, a lot of our friends are working on in the public policy area, making sure that women have the medical coverage they need up to a year after birth. I mean, there are other things that we're working on, but we need to kind of own these issues as the pro-life movement and say, foster care reform, adoption reform, these things come under the umbrella of building a pro-life Texas. Now, they're all kind of scattered political issues, and there's a lot that we could put on that list, but our message in the Capitol has been, hey, some of these issues can get accomplished just with a little bit more political push, with a little bit more attention from regular citizens. And some of these are complicated issues. I mean, CPS and foster care reform is extremely difficult, but we need regular pro-lifers to think this is part of our mission now, is building a pro-life. Now, a lot of people already have that mindset, but we need to be very clear these issues, like making sure women have, up to a year after birth, have the medical coverage they need, that's a pro-life issue. And so I think that's one thing that we're talking about. So building a pro-life Texas so that we're abortion-free and we're pro-life.
Yeah. I saw an ad in a local church in Houston the other day that was planning a couple months ahead to have a meeting with the parishioners and the committee members and the elders of the church and everything. They were planning a post-Roe meeting for their church. And I was like, that is amazing, because they were probably already doing pro-life activities, but they recognize as a conglomerate, our work is going to change now and we need to do something different, something more, something bigger. And I was like, that is so cool. If only all churches did that. They're like, oh, Roe's about to overturn, time to have a meeting and get ready to work. I'm like, wouldn't that be so great?
Hey, here, shameless plug, we can come talk to your church about such things. We can help facilitate these meetings and talk to your church about getting involved. What does the church look like post-Roe?
Mobilized. Like, we got to Roe v. Wade because the church was silent. We can't. It's very easy to get right back into that cycle, and it's important that we don't. So make sure your church is getting involved.
All right. So Emily, Roe v. Wade is going to be overturned.
We hope.
Right, and we're getting close to having the right public policies to support pregnant women and save preborn children. Are we done?
We're so done. We're all going to retire now.
That is a joke. Just telling you.
So, I mean, over the last couple decades, we've seen this very interesting dichotomy. As we've gotten closer to protecting life in the womb, we have gotten further from protecting life on the other end of the spectrum, from people who are elderly, who have a severe illness, or have the presence of a disability in their life. And if you follow Texas Right to Life at all, you know that we're very active in patients' rights, and it's something that the pro-life community, because we believe that life is precious, and that someone's life in the womb, regardless of any circumstance, is just as valuable as someone else's life. That same ethic comes and talks to us, tells us, informs us how to approach those on the margins of society who are sick, who cannot speak for themselves, or who have a disability, and we fight for them. And this kind of culture of quality of life determinations and you're not worthy enough to be living, or I don't believe that your life means as much. I wouldn't want to live that way, so I get to make that decision for you.
It's usually framed like that, like, well, I wouldn't want to live like that, so I'll go ahead and do you this favor.
Right, exactly.
It's the opposite of I'm personally pro-life. It's like I'm personally pro-death for you.
Oh,
yes.
hot take, but that's so right. Oh my gosh.
I just thought about that.
Wow. Yeah. And so we see that struggle, and it is becoming increasingly prevalent in the delivery of healthcare in our country. And we're kind of starting from ground zero about fashioning laws that are protective of patients and their decision-making capabilities and their surrogates, and providing life-affirming health care, and then also educating our actual doctors and nurses, because what we have found is that they are just so inundated with people who are against abortion and call themselves pro-life. They have been taught from that very vulnerable age of being in college and residency and med school that for some reason something changed. I mean, I can't quite fix my head around it, but something is different, and now this idea of suffering is bad, but it's also something that I get to determine what is enough suffering for you.
Right.
It's crazy. So that's a huge fight that the pro-life community has the responsibility and the tools to continue engaging in, because we're seeing items like we have Texas's 10-day law here. We've got every state has a brain death statute law that is just that is a whole other can of worms. Then you've got states who are actually passing physician-assisted suicide, and we're just getting on and on about this euthanasia business.
Yeah. So different class of innocent human life that needs protection from the movement. So while we may have victories with pregnant women and preborn children, that there are these other issues that we still have to fight for life on, and that's cultural, that's education about life is worthy. Life is valuable, even if it's a low quality. Someone would say it's a low quality of life. It's education, but it's also policy, like you said. Like there are, states now debating assisted suicide laws, and then Texas, we have our unique problem of the 10-day rule. Thankfully, no other state followed us in that example, but it's still on our books, and it still, puts innocent human life in jeopardy in Texas. So. So all these other issues, I mean, one of our staff members is really focused on embryo-destroying research. How do we stop embryo-destroying research in our higher ed institutions, in our research, biotech industry here in Texas? So there's still other issues that are threatening innocent human life that the pro-life movement has to be committed to, having victories. And you think about, if it took this long on abortion, you think of something like you're dealing with in the medical ethics side, how long are these fights going to go on? It's just that, perseverance of the pro-life movement that's gotten us here on abortion, and it's going to need that same kind of commitment, on these other issues. So.
Yep.
And I think it's important to be mindful. It's because the reason all of these issues keep coming up and we have to keep fighting for them is because life is the most sacred gift that we have from God. And therefore, the enemy sees that as the most important thing for him to attack. So it's never going to be like, well, we did it, we won. There's always going to be those new fights, those new issues. And that's not just because, humans are flawed and keep doing sinful things, which we do. It's because this is a spiritual war, and these are spiritual attacks. So, I mean, from now until the decision comes out that could overturn Roe v. Wade, we need to double down on our prayers for the justices, that they will overturn Roe v. Wade and do the right thing and not back down to the mob. We've seen so much vandalism and cultural chaos and all of these terrible things because this is a spiritual war.
Yeah. Speaking of the mob, a church that I love in Houston, Holy Rosary Catholic Church, was vandalized over the weekend, just like the call to action from the pro-choice, what would you call them?
Ruth
Sent Us extremists. I mean, there's been an organized movement over the weekend to attack churches and to send people in their weird costumes into churches. And
Red Riding Hood.
I know. It's really sad. So pray for those people.
Yeah.
And it's weird when you mention about this is spiritual war. It's funny. I actually find some comfort in that. Maybe other people would be more intimidated by that, but because every now and then, we crave victory, we crave this job being finished. But I remember years ago, because I've been doing this for 13 years now, I just decided I'm going to stop thinking about the victory at all because it doesn't matter. Like, this is, like you said, we will always have this fight. It reminds me of when Christ said, we will always have the poor. It's like you cannot just cure poverty or cure, the pro-choice issue or cure against euthanasia. You can't. It will never be finished. And to some people, that might be depressing. They'd be like, oh, well, then why even work on it because it's never going to be finished. But I actually really feel the opposite way. I feel comforted knowing that it's not my obligation to fix it. And I'm just part of it. I'm just part of the battle. And then, of course, Christ is going to win. He already has won. He's going to fix all of this in the end. And I'm just part of it. So I don't have to feel so downtrodden when it doesn't work out or when we have to go to the next fight. So hopefully that's comforting for you too.
Yeah, in the end, when you're asked, what did you do with what I gave you?
Right.
Yeah.
It's like I gave you everything, and sometimes it worked and sometimes it didn't, but I gave you everything. Yeah.
Well, this is a heart of man issue, not a political issue. The church has had this abortion issue really from its origins in children getting discarded in Rome and getting left in the trash heap.
Right. I mean, they would leave their disabled children out in the elements to die. And
right.
Because they had a quality of life judgment.
And the early Christians would pull kids out of the trash. And the
We're
church
still
has
doing
its
that.
the church has its foundations in the pro-life movement. It's part of who we are. So it's time that the church stand up and pick up this fight again.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, reporters are asking us about your movement's almost accomplished. It's almost done.
They have no idea.
But and so the fact, yes, this is the end of a chapter, a very important end that needed to happen. We needed to end Roe so that we could move to the next chapter. But it really is turning the page and continuing the work like you're talking about. And I think that's what my team, the legislative team, is very excited about because our elected officials are really ready. I mean, they are talking about this. This is the earliest that we've had legislators reach out to us, more legislators reach out to us and say, what are we working on for next year? Yeah. Usually I have to go, bust down their door and be like, I need you to think, yes, I know elections, but you need to focus on this. But we're getting that. And a lot of our great, pro-life heroes are sending me articles, they're texting me, whenever they see something, they say another state, Tennessee just did something, and I had an elected official is like, hey, is our bill better than that one, or do we need to fix our? I mean, it's just they are excited about this, and so I think our team's very encouraged, and we're ready. We're ready to do it, and unfortunately, we got a little preview of it last week, but unfortunately, we have to wait for the Supreme Court, which could be at the end of June, and so it's okay, all right.
It's the 8th inning of Game 1 of the World Series, so we're near the end of the game. It looks like we've won.
Thank you for the sports analogy.
Yeah, that's all right. But we've still got some more games to play here.
Do the thing with the ball.
With the sports. Go sports team.
Oh my gosh.
I had a shirt one time that said, play the sports.
If you can't tell,
Imperative.
not many of us are really into sports.
Oh no, it said yay sports or something.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's the Hulk has got the Infinity Stones.
Oh yes.
Is this more relatable now, guys?
All about the Marvel. Yes.
Okay. So
Pray for our superheroes.
Dumbledore
The
walked
Supreme
into
Court just-
Gondor, and then the Millennial Falcon. I'm just kidding. That's a joke. I know the sci-fi stuff.
You're just gonna blow up the comments.
I'm
section
just
now.
joking.
Quote Gandalf.
Okay, now that you're done trolling for comments, takeaways from today. We'll put a list of pregnancy centers in Texas. Find one near you. There's definitely one near you. Find one. Get involved. Couple hours a week, a month, anything helps. Shameless plug. We can come speak to your church if you would like. So forward this video, this audio, whatever. Forward it to your pastor. Forward it to your church staff. And we'll come out and talk if you invite us. And pray. We have a lot to pray for in our country. We have a lot to pray for the courts still. So anything else, guys, before we go today?
I think that if you're excited about this vision for what the pro-life movement looks like after Roe v. Wade and what we're going to do after the fact, please donate, because we can't do this without the entire church, without the entire body of Christ taking part in this mission. So you can, we have a donate link below. You can go to texasrighttolife.com/donate, because we cannot do this by ourselves. It doesn't work if we just sit here talking about it unless we have partners in this mission.
Yeah. And go out into the field too. Yeah.
Well, thanks, guys. Thank you for watching. So share, like, and share this video, and we'll see you next week.